Today's class is called What Do I Do If I've Been Sitting for Too Long? And if you want to look at it more from anatomy and physiology, we're just going to look at the joint mobilization and just balance the muscles a little bit. So let's start with a vagal release, and let's just do my favorite, which is right ear to right shoulder. And you're thinking left hinge of jaw to the ceiling. That's the most important thing. As you pull the hinge of the jaw up, your cervical vertebrae are pulled backwards and upwards, which repositions them. And then you're looking down at the right shoulder. You could be doing a multiple things. You could push the tongue into the roof of the mouth. Think of that sour lemon. Try not to swallow. Let the saliva fill the mouth. And you could also be doing rubbing the thumb on the lower digit of your little finger. That's not a vagal release, that's one of the other cranial nerves, but it's also another way of just checking in with your nervous system. So you're looking down at the shoulder, you're keeping that left side of jaw slightly uncomfortably pulled up towards the ceiling to bring your neck into that better posture. So if you've been sitting for too long at a computer, you are starting to move into forward head posture, which is really going to mess up a whole load of things. So not just the neck muscles. It's definitely going to take you out of that nice balanced nervous state. So then looking up and away, you're still rubbing the inside of the little finger. You're still thinking occasionally of that sour lemon. Tongue into the roof of the mouth. So even just the tongue into the roof of the mouth is a way of connecting with the nerves that are coming out of the brain stem, which is sort of at the back of the mouth, slightly upwards. So I've got a nice sigh there. If you do it for about 30 seconds, and then it is always a little bit uncomfortable to come out of this. So support the head to come back into center. Just do some nose circles. So if you've got any tightness in the side of the neck, so if you're looking down at a laptop, you tend to be tipped and slightly looking maybe to one side. So that's going to shorten one side of the neck. It's going to weaken that side of the neck. So left side, left ear to left shoulder, right hinge of jaw up to the ceiling. You're looking down at the left shoulder with both eyes, rubbing the inside of the fingers, the lower digit of the little finger, tongue to the roof of the mouth. Think of that sour lemon, but even just the head position is enough to create a reaction in the saliva of the mouth. Try not to swallow. As the mouth fills with saliva, that's also sending messages through the nervous system to the brain. So about 30 seconds, and then you're looking up and away. So the eye positioning is still the vagal system, but it's a different branch of the vagal system. And keep that right side jaw uncomfortably lifted to the ceiling. So in a retracted neck. I'm getting a lot of saliva in my mouth, which is really good. And then just gently support the head and come back to center. Do a few shoulder rolls. How about doing some circles with your nose? Circles are really good. They're taking your neck C1 and C2, so you're not really bending from lower down, but you're taking your neck through quite a variety of ranges. It's good to do this one sitting down because you can get a little bit dizzy when you do neck work. And then you're going the other way. So that could be something you just do as a quick fix if you're looking at the computer. And then another thing you could do is 2 fingers on the front of the chin. Just drop the chin towards the bones of the neck, and then just a gentle press. And just see, are you tight in the suboccipital muscles at the back of the neck? So if you're in forward head posture, your suboccipital triangle, that group of muscles, is going to be really short and tight and unhappy. So again, this is just a nice gentle way just to bring the neck into a little bit more balance. Just roll the shoulders. So the first joint we're looking at is C1, C2, which is sort of level with the back of the ears. So if we grab our band or our scarf, if you're looking down at a computer, the back muscles of the neck are lengthened and they're locked in a long position. The front of the neck is shortened. So the long locked muscles at the back are going to weaken because they're not being moved and they're holding the weight of the skull. So a nice simple exercise you could do would be to get a band or a scarf, put it at the back of the skull, take the hands forward. If I turn sideways, chin slightly tucked, and then you're just gently pushing backwards against the resistance of the band. So just find a comfortable resistance and maybe do about 20. So as you strengthen these capitis muscles at the back of the neck, you're signaling through the nerves in the muscles and the fascia to relax the neck, and you're strengthening them because they're getting weaker and weaker if you're spending hours and hours at a computer. So sometimes our problem is because our muscles are becoming atrophied, wasted and weakened from being held in one position for too long and losing the balance in the muscles that reciprocate with each other. So muscles work in groups, and if one of those muscles in the group is not working, it's going to really fire up all the other muscles in the neck, make them quite unhappy. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable while you're doing it, but it should feel better after you've done it. And you would do this little and often. Okay, another way to work the back of the neck is to make two fists under your chin, and you're going to push up and push your chin against the fists as you look upwards, and then even pressing down as well. So we'll just do 10. Pushing, so you're pushing with your fist, but you're pressing your chin into the fist. So that's an isometric exercise. So isometric means equal pressure. So equal force in the chin pushing down and the fist pushing up. And you can feel as you're doing this that your neck muscles are working quite hard. So you could periodically through the day just do 10 of these. Not enough to irritate the neck, but just to strengthen the neck. So this is 7. You could let your eyes look up at the ceiling as well. So again, as you move the eyes around, you're working different parts of the brain. One more. So I can feel after doing those 2 exercises together, I'm quite aware of my trapezius and the muscles in the back of my neck. Do some shoulder rolls. So then maybe it's not the muscles in the back of the neck. Maybe you're looking down at your computer to one side and it's one side of your neck. So then you could put your palm against your temple and you could press your head into your palm into your head, 1, 2, 3, and relax. And you could do 10 of those. So for time, let's just do 5 because we've got a lot to get through. So this is just to remind you that sometimes our neck is uncomfortable and painful because the muscles are weakened and locked in a long position. So muscles can be locked short or they can be locked long. And I personally think the lock long is worse than the lock short. Put the hand just slightly to the side of your forehead and nose to armpit. So it's a little bit nuanced. You might just find different ranges, might just really hit those muscles. It could be a little bit painful, but you just use repetition, and it's just a way of signaling those irritated nerves to relax and to let go of some of their tightness. So that's 5. Try the other side. So palm on the temple, 5 to the side. So these are your scalenes, your trapezius, levator scapulae, sternocleidomastoid, a little bit. That's 4. Sternocleidomastoid are these big muscles at the front here. So to get to that one, you go to the side of the forehead and it's nose to armpit. And just bring in a little bit of rotation. It's 4. That's 5. So not enough to irritate the neck, but just to signal the nervous system and just see if your neck feels a little bit better after doing that. So the next one we're going to do is we're going to come to standing. I'll move my chair for a minute. Get rid of the band. We don't need the band anymore. So how about we just take our hands together, take them overhead, and just do a little bit of a side bend. And let's just bring in the side muscles of the body. So quite often our abdominals and our obliques get very uncomfortable if we're sitting for too long. Couple more. So just sort of testing the waters there. And then take two flat hands and put them in the space between the ribs and the pelvis at the back. Tuck your chin and then just do a gentle stretch backwards. That's your psoas, that's the muscles in the front of your spine. So you're just stretching out. So if you're sitting for a long time, your psoas will shorten and then it pulls your back out of neutral. And it's one of those feelings in the body that you just feel very uncomfortable, very tight, but you can't quite describe where or why you're feeling that way. And it's because it's one of the deepest muscles. It is probably the deepest muscle in the body, I would say, and the most influential. So let's just think about mobilising the next joint in the body. So we've got C1, C2, thoracic 12 and lumbar 1. So soften your knees, feet hip space. Think of your rib cage as a bell and just let the bell swing from the lower ribs and just articulate thoracic 12, lumbar 1. It might be a little bit stiff, a little bit uncomfortable. So again, if you're sitting bending forward, you're going to weaken the muscles in the front of the body, and the back muscles, the upper back muscles, are going to get very irritated, shortened, or lengthened and weakened as you're rounding forward. So we're just sort of testing how tight are we at this joint. So there's always a lot of conflict and tension at a joint in the spine where there's change of function. So let the bell now swing forward and swing back. So we're extending the spine, we're flexing the spine. Be gentle. So where the spine changes function, so where the neck meets the skull, where the thoracic meets the lumbar, where the lumbar meets the sacral, you've always got a lot of conflict, a lot of tension. So now you've done that, see if you could make the bell swing in a circle. Try and soften your knees and not move your legs too much. Try and make the movement come from the ribs. So when you're tight, you'll try and do this with your pelvis. Try and keep your pelvis fixed and disassociate the rib cage from the pelvis. So the pelvis not moving and the ribs circling. And that's a really nice movement to make. You can feel in some of those ranges in the circle pretty tight. Go the other way. And again, try not to move the pelvis too much. So for me, I chose my favorite direction. Now I'm really struggling to not bring in the pelvis too much. So that shows tightness. Go the other way again. So going this way, there's a lot more, if you look at my pelvis, you can see there's a lot more control of the pelvis. But when I go this way, suddenly it's pretty difficult for me to get that separation between rib cage and pelvis. So go back to swinging forward and back. Does that seem a little bit easier? Side to side. That definitely feels nicer. Back into your circles. So the bell, think of your rib cage as the bell, go the other way, try to disassociate, which means to separate certain parts of your body. So not moving the spine, not moving the pelvis, but moving the rib cage. So how about now we just come into a twerk. The twerk, what I call the twerk, is the best exercise if you've been sitting at your computer for too long because of the forward positioning and the forward head posture. So elbows tucked to the ribs, and you're going to keep the elbows on the rib cage as you take your thumbs to the back and just feel that lovely stretch that you get through your chest, and you're strengthening the muscles in the back of the body. So you cross your palms, you look down, bring the neck in, and then you're lifting the heart, squeeze the thumbs back, find a stretch that feels good. Add the breath. You breathe out as you cross, and you breathe in and expand your rib cage as you move the thumbs to the back. Breathe out, look down. Breathe in, look up, but keep your chin slightly pulled in, so you're not throwing the head back. So it's your cervical spine and your thoracolumbar spine. So even the lumbar spine is getting a stretch here. So you can bring in the lumbar a little bit more by tucking your bottom under and then swinging your tailbone out as you look up. Tucking under, breathe in as you look up, breathing out. So now you could be thinking of your pelvis as the bell, swinging to the back, swinging to the front, swinging to the back. And I would say do 10 or 20 of these and your whole spine will feel a lot happier. Tailbone back and out, tailbone under. One more, tailbone back and out, tailbone under. So then we could focus on the L5-S1 by just softening our knees and just doing a few pelvic tucks. So let's think of the pelvis as the bell now, and the bell is swinging forward and it's swinging to the back. And just find what's comfortable. If you've been sitting for a long time and your psoas is tight, your back muscles are going to be shortened and quite unhappy. So from the side, tailbones, the bell swings to the back, the bell swings to the front. So just keep going with that. And as much as you can, try to disassociate the pelvis from the legs. So the legs not moving, just the pelvis rolling over the heads of the femurs in the hip socket. So then you could try and see if you could bring in the bell swinging from side to side. My back's not so sure about that one. So again, try not to move the legs. Try not to just move the legs. That's going to make it much easier. Try and keep your leg bones in position and swing without moving the legs too much. So we're articulating L5, lumbar 5, sacral 1. So then you could make the pelvis circle like the bell swinging in a circle. Again, try and keep the legs fairly static and go the other way. And again, think, does it feel easier in one direction than the other? So a little bit harder for me going this way. So we've all got biases in the body. Forward and back feels a little bit easier now. Side to side, that feels a little bit easier, although it's still a little bit catching on one side. So these are just things that we're looking at. Let's come back into our stretches. Come back into feet hip space, link the fingers, and now go back into the side bend. Does that feel a little bit easier? So you could just, if you've been sat for a long time, you could just do a side bend. Be gentle. You could turn that into a sort of a circle once your back has relaxed a little bit, and then go the other way. Keep your chin tucked. And again, so you're drawing the circle with your hands. Do it slow enough that your spinal muscles can organize and stabilize. One more. And come back into center. Coming into feet hip space, come into a sort of a squat position. And if you look at it from the side, you're pushing your bottom out. So you've got that lovely curve in your spine. As you push your bottom backwards, your sit bones, the bottom of your pelvis, widens and pushes out, which stretches your inner thighs, your hamstrings, and your pelvic floor. And then you're going to come into sort of a cat stretch. You're rounding your back and you're looking at your knees. So again, the breath, you breathe in as the body opens. And you breathe out as the body closes. So it's really a cat stretch. So you're breathing in. Feel the stretch of your sit bones. Breathing out. Breathing in. A really lovely stretch. Breathing out. One more. Breathing in. Breathing out. Now you could put your hands on the chair, or you could try hands on the floor and just see again if you could breathe in, look forward, breathe out and round, a little bit stronger. Don't go into too strong. Keep it about 60% of your natural range. Tucking under, breathing in, breathing out, and then just tuck your tailbone under and come back up through the legs. So just try a squat now. You're going to come into a squat and you're going to hold 1, 2, 3 and then come back. So you're just trying to fire up your glutes because they've weakened as you've been sitting, and your quads have tightened. So you're sitting again, 1, 2, 3, and you really use your bottom muscles to squeeze and contract as you come up. So let's do 10. 1, 2, 3, and contract and tuck and squeeze. Sitting into it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all the big strong muscles of the body become weakened and out of balance when we sit for too long. 1, 2, 3. We're not really designed to sit. Things like sofas, even toilets are questionable because they stop us using our strong muscles. 1, 2, 3. Squeeze and tighten. So we should be aware of our quads, our hamstrings, our glutes. This is a great way to relax our back. Every time you do a squat, you strengthen your pelvic floor. So people always ask about pelvic floor exercises. The squat is the best pelvic floor exercise. So you're stretching the pelvic floor as you go into the squat. It contracts as you come up. One more. 1, 2, 3. So we should be quite aware of our legs now and our big muscles of the body. Let's do a spinal roll. Test the back, soften the knees, and we're rolling down. Just touch the floor. Take a nice deep breath in, and as you breathe out, draw the sit bones together, tuck the tailbone under, and then come into a Y stretch, and lift the heart, pull the belly button gently into the spine, and come back down. So we do that again. Soften the knees, rolling down. Take a breath. As you breathe out, draw the sit bones together, tuck the tailbone under, coming into your Y. Pull the belly button in, so that's an hyperextending spine. Come back down, rolling down. Feel the stretch in the hamstrings, in the bottom. As you breathe out, draw the sit bones together, use your pelvic floor, your inner thighs, your hamstrings to come back up. Come back down. So we can make that a little bit stronger by rolling down and reaching to the opposite calf. Come back into center, tuck the tailbone under, roll back up, opening, and then rolling down and spiraling towards the other ankle. So you're holding the ankle and the calf, you come back into center, draw the sit bones together, opening up. One more time each. Roll down in center, and then at the last minute, spiral to touch the opposite ankle and maybe touch the opposite calf. A little bit stronger. Come back to center, draw the sit bones together, tuck under, opening up. Last one, rolling down. At the last minute, you're reaching to the opposite ankle and the opposite calf. Stay there just long enough to feel that strong stretch, and then come back into center. Draw the sit bones together, rolling up, opening into your Y stretch, and come back down. So let's bring the chair back. I'm not doing much sitting today. It's the chair is there, really is to help us with balancing. Whoopsie. So let's come into a hip protocol. So we're just going to, if you've been sitting for a long time, these hip muscles have gotten very disordered and out of balance. So we're going to do the 6 movements for the hip. So we're floating the outside knee, we're abducting the leg, taking it towards the midline, and we're doing a reach towards the leg of the chair. So that's a TFL stretch. Come back into a flex knee, abduct, take away, internally rotate the femur, externally rotate the femur, high knee around, and then you come into what is the most difficult range, which is extension, and just make sure your ribs don't pop forward. Into flexion. Flexion's easy, we do that all the time. Back into extension. Just watch the curve of the back. High knee around. And let's repeat it. Adduct. Extend and reach. Into flexion. Abduct. internal rotation of the femur in the hip, external rotation, just an ordinary rotation as we take the knee around as high as we can go, and then we move it backwards into extension, and just watch that we don't move the ribs, into flexion, back into extension, high knee around. One more time, adduct and reach, into flexion, abduct. The hip, the femur in the hip internally rotates, externally rotates, high knee as high as you can, as slow as you can around, and then into extension, and keep the ribs very calm. Into flexion, into extension, high knee around, and place the foot. Do a few knee bends. And then first position, just draw some big circles with your knees. So circles are great because they take the joint and the limb or the head through multiple ranges. You can feel those muscles working really hard, and then change direction. So you can feel your big glutes working, even your little glutes working, standing legs working, transversus abdominis working, low back working. So pretty good movement. Toes to front, little knee bends, maybe do a few ponies. Just try and get that working standing leg relaxed a little bit. Change the chair or turn around. First position just puts the standing leg in a better position. Flexing the knee, adducting and reaching to the front leg of the chair. Flexing, abduct, internal rotation, external rotation, high knee around, into extension. I'm noticing straight away this hip is tight, not so flexible. Flexion, extension, keep the ribs calm, high knee around, adduct and extend, flexing, abduct, knee turns down, knee turns up and out, into uncomfortable range, around in a high position to really challenge the hip, into extension but keep the ribs calm, into flexion, into extension, high knee around, adduction and reach and touch, flexion, abduct, internal rotation till you feel it in the hip, external rotation till you feel it in the hip, high knee around, slow, and make it slightly uncomfortable. These are the moves that keep your hips really healthy. Move into extension, move the knee back, move the knee forward, back into extension, high knee around, and place the foot down. Well done. Just do a few little squats, a few ponies. Come back into first, knee circles. So just challenge the hip and the hip complex. Maybe turn on the abs a little bit, pull up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, go the other way. And you notice your standing leg is pretty fatigued from what it already did. And a few knee bends. So just do the little mini squats, the ponies. So step away from the chair and just put your forearms on the chair and just the back of the chair, and just push your sit bones out and away from you. Feel like you're trying to lengthen the crown of the head away from the sit bones, and the sit bone away from the crown of the head. So this is just a nice back stretch. The nicest way to do this is on maybe your kitchen bench. I'm going to push it out a bit. If it's sticking into your forearms, it's uncomfortable, put the hands on the back of the chair. Let the head just drop. Press your palms into the back of the chair and try and connect gently with your chest muscles, your shoulder blade muscles, upper back. Take a breath. And then bend your knees, tuck your tailbone under and come back into center. So that's just a nice, that stretch is really for the long muscles of your back. So let's just do a little bit of leg work. Have the feet Bring the feet into first position. Not too extreme. Actually, let's change that. Let's have the feet slightly apart, hinging at the hip. And then you're going to use your bottom muscles to bring your head back up. Knees are soft. So you're hinging from the front of your hips. So if you jab your fingers in, that's where the movement is. As you hinge forward, feel the hamstrings stretch. Think belly button to big toe, so it's an anterior forward tilt of your pelvis. So it's really stretching your hamstrings, firing up your glutes. This exercise is really good for the little muscles of your spine, multifidi, which are responsible for proprioception. So as your body tips forward, those little muscles talk to the brain to tell the brain what is happening with the torso. So a nice hamstring stretch. It's a nice way to stretch your hamstrings without irritating your back or your knees. Now bring in a little bit of an easy squat. Just bring in your calves. So that's knees and ankles. So we're looking at the joints. And then lift the bottom, lift the head. Hinging. Easy squat. Lift the bottom, lift the head. So these are the big muscles that have been weakened from sitting too long. So we're really bringing them back, getting them talking to the brain. Easy squat. Feel the calves, feel the Achilles. Pelvic floor is working, abs are working, back muscles are working. So it's a whole body movement. So maybe make sure you're not too far away from the chair. You're going to hinge, easy squat, and then hold the chair and come into some sort of squat and just do a little bit of a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And then strong abs and push up and out of it. Let's just do 3. Hinging, easy squat, hold the chair, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Just decide where am I tight. So I'm obviously very tight in my Achilles and calves because my heels won't touch the floor. Strong abs as you push back up. One more time, hinging, easy squat, hold the chair, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And then focus on your abs to push up and out. Let's get rid of the chair. Let's go on to the floor. Bring the mat in. So coming into, make sure you've got a pillow for the neck. And let's just come to the floor. So let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. So coming into lying on our back, pillow for the neck if we need it. And just, we get to lie down. So thinking about disassociating the joints of the spine, let's just come back into a pelvic tuck and let's just focus on L5, S1. So as we tuck the pelvis, as we tuck the tailbone, we can feel the lower part of the lumbar spine where it comes into the back of the pelvis. So that joint, L5, S1, a lot of activity there. So if you want to make this a little bit stronger now, let the belly button rise and let the tailbone drop to the floor. So that's an anterior tilt to the front, come back to level, and then as the belly button drops, that's a posterior tilt to the back, come back to level, so we're going into forward, belly button up, level, belly button down. So just using repetition to really wiggle and articulate, mobilize this joint, and then come back into level. So now let's think about right hip down to right ankle and left hip up to left shoulder. So that is now a transverse movement, and just gentle on this one because this is really quite strong, and you might just find if you're tight here at this joint that this movement is challenging. So left hip down to left ankle, right hip up to right shoulder. It's also bringing in the ligaments of the back and the pelvis and the long muscles of the back. Right hip down, left hip up to left shoulder. So think 60% range, and you always stay in a safe range You won't push your back into a range that it's not happy with. Left hip, but you want to challenge a little bit. So one more time, right hip down, left hip up. Come back to level, left hip down, right hip up. So you can really feel that joint as being stretched and moved around, and come back into center. And then you could do a sort of a circle. So just draw a circle with your pelvis and just see how smooth it feels. If there's any ranges that are uncomfortable, try and keep your knees still so the femurs, the head of the femurs in the hip are not moving, and it's the pelvis that's sort of rolling around the head of the femur. Go the other way. So again, all these things keep your hips really nicely lubricated, nicely healthy, oxygenated, and come back into center. So let's just bring our feet and our knees together. Hold on my notes. And let's just level pelvis, pull up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, and just let your right knee fall out to the side. And then deeply imprint your abs to pull up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, tighten the waist to bring that right knee back in. So maybe hold the pelvis with the hands. So then let the left knee fall out. And then again, you're pulling up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, tighten the waist, draw the knee back in. As you use these deep core muscles, your back just relaxes, everything just balances. So oftentimes just doing basic Pilates exercise is enough to make your back feel comfortable again. Just bring in the strong muscles back that have weakened from sitting, and then draw the knees together, feel that corset of muscles tightening, and then left knee out. Try and think sequentially. So you're sort of thinking inner thigh squeeze, pelvic floor pulling up, low abs engaging, belly button engaging, waist engaging. So maybe now let both knees fall out. And the same thing, inner thigh squeeze, pull up through the pelvic floor, deeply imprint your belly button, tighten your waist, feel the corset activate, and then relax and open. So again, inner thigh squeeze, pelvic floor, pull the belly button to the low rib cage at the back, feel the waist is tightening, opening. So again, inner thigh squeeze, pelvic floor, belly button, waist. Should have a little bit of a space in the small of the back. That way the back muscles are working as well. Opening the knees. If the back is pressing into the floor, the back muscles will relax, and we don't want that. We want the whole corset of muscles working together. Inner thigh squeeze, pelvic floor pulls up, belly button imprints to the back of the ribs, waist, so that's transversus abdominis engaging. So one more time, you're opening out through the knees, and then inner thigh squeeze, pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, engage your waist, and relaxing. Separate the feet and just do a few pelvic tucks again, and just let things release and relax. So feet hip space, level pelvis, steady the pelvis with the palms, pull up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, tighten the waist, and just float your right knee and take the foot down. So the simplest of movements, but you're aiming to engage your powerhouse, float your left knee without any movement in the bones of your skeleton in your torso. So if you're moving in the pelvis or the ribs or the spine, your body is not quite as strong as it should be. You should be able to hold your torso completely still as you disassociate moving the leg without moving the pelvis, the rib cage, the lumbar spine. So the more you learn to disassociate parts of the body, the more control you have, the greater your strength. Now, once you've mastered that, you would float your right knee, and then you deepen your powerhouse and you'd float your second knee. Right knee down, hip space, left knee down. Change the leading leg, left knee floats, right knee follows, left knee down, right knee down. If you want to make this a little bit harder, you float your arms to the ceiling, right knee Left knee, can you keep your hands perfectly still, or is your body moving around? Left foot down. Left knee up, right knee up, left knee down, right knee down. Just do a few pelvic tucks. It's around this time that you start to notice your back muscles are getting a bit tired. That's great. That means they're working nice and hard. Come back into a level pelvis. A little bit of a space in the small of the back. And again, you're going to float the right knee, float the left knee. Maybe you float the arms. See if you could do a slow toe tap to the floor and still keep the bones of your torso nice and still. See if you could do it with the left leg. There's always one side of the body slightly stronger than the other, no matter how much you train. There's always a slight bias, but you want that to be as little as possible. If you can do that with good control, take the heel to the floor. Are you keeping your hands nice and still? Are your ribs and your pelvis staying still? Heel. So the heel is a little bit more work. If you can do that, deeply imprint your abs, could you lower both toes towards the floor and come back up? So you're going to pull up through the pelvic floor, imprint the belly button, tighten the waist. If you could master that, maybe you could take your heels to the floor. You don't have to touch the floor. If your back starts to pull away from the mat, then that's where you should stop. So by now, you should be feeling your powerhouse working nicely. I'm going to do one more. And this time, let the feet settle on the floor, separate the feet and do those pelvic tucks again, just to check in with the back. Make sure the back is not too uncomfortable and tight. So let's roll over onto our side. Well done. So just by bringing those deep, deep muscles, those core muscles, we're already relaxing our spine and bringing balance back into our pelvis. If your neck is uncomfortable, put the pillow between the shoulder and the ear, or you could put your arm out and use that as a support for the neck. I quite like holding the back of the neck, and that just gives your neck support. And let's just come into some side lying exercises. So let's just have the toes together, push the top hip away so that the waist lifts slightly, and let's just come into a clam. So the clam is the best exercise for strengthening the weak muscles at the back of the pelvis. So this sort of side leg movement is the range that we use least when we're moving around. Unless you do lots of swimming or gymnastics or something, you're not going to do a lot of side movements. Most of our movement is forward. So we're just really keeping the pelvis still. We're keeping a little bit of lift in the waist. So then you could separate the feet, but keep the leg nicely parallel. So you don't want the foot high because that's going to work the hip too much. Just parallel, lift and lower. So using the weight of the leg to challenge the glute muscles. One more. A little bit of a thump if it's getting tired. Just relax with some tapping. So now keep that top hip pushed away, a little bit of lift in the waist, extend the top leg, and just lifting and lowering in a small range. So if you measure the gap between the 12th lowest rib and the top of the pelvis, that space doesn't change. If you were to lift your leg up really high, that space disappears. So keep that long waist and just lift and lower in that long neutral spine, neutral pelvis. So again, we're really working the big muscles that have gotten weakened from being sitting too long. So now little circles, and see if you can keep the rib cage and the pelvis nicely under control. So you're disassociating the leg from the pelvis. The pelvis is not moving. Go the other way. You really start to notice the big muscles working as you do this. You could press your bent knee into the floor. So you're really using your low abs, low back, and then bring the knees together. A little bit of tapping. And then one of my favorite hip exercises is développé. You bring the knee into the chest. You can allow your spine to move in this one. Knee to ceiling,
foot to ceiling, flex, strong abs, strong glutes, and take the leg down in line with your spine. So breathe in as the knee comes in, knee to ceiling, foot to ceiling and flex, strong abs, strong glutes. So you're really using your powerhouse to bring that leg down. Breathe in, knee to ceiling, foot to ceiling, flex. Breathing out, so you can press the bent knee into the floor. 2 more, breathing in, knee to ceiling, foot to ceiling, flex all the way down. Last one, knee to chest, knee to ceiling, foot to ceiling, all the way down, and bend the knees and a little bit of a tap there. Extend the leg out and still working this side, coming forward and moving backwards, but just keep the rib cage, the torso nice and calm. So we're not popping the chest forward and not rounding the back. We're just swinging. So that's a bottom and a hamstring stretch and a quad and a hip flexor stretch. So do a few of those, and then that turns into a circle. So we've relaxed that hip, we've strengthened it, and we've relaxed it, so that now we can do this big circle. So it's sort of like développé, but in a different angle. Focus on abs, and the leg move will be a lot easier. And then you're going to bend your knee, you're going to hold the foot, and you're going to push forward from the front of the pelvis. So the quad stretch is not about bringing the heel to the bottom, it's about pushing forward through ASIS at the front of the pelvis. So push the pelvis forward, keep your elbow a little bit soft, and breathe. And then relax the stretch, take the bottom foot out, foot onto the knee, and just sort of a little bit of a pull down, and just stretch the iliotibial band, the outer quad. So where the black is on my trousers is sort of where the stretch is. And releasing. So coming into sitting, change sides. Quite a long sequence, so I hope I remember that. We will see. So you're going to start by making sure the neck is comfortable. You're pushing the top hip away, the waist is lifting, and you're doing your clown. So make sure the bone of the pelvis stays nicely still. You're connected with those muscles at the back of the pelvis. Couple more. So then we opened the feet and we lifted the leg in parallel. Really feel the glutes starting to work. You can press the bent knee into the floor. Try and keep a little bit of lift in the waist. I was supporting my neck this way before. When the head is down, it's easier to keep the waist lifted. When the head is up, you tend to drop into the waist. One more. So just have a little rest. I've forgotten what I was doing. So now we're going to push out that top hip. We're going to extend the top leg, still keep lifted in the waist, and we're just lifting and lowering in that small range. So if you measure the space between the lowest rib and the top of the pelvis, that gap doesn't change. So try and stay very long in the top side waist. And then that develops into a circle. Press the bent knee on the floor into the floor. It'll help you with your balance. And then draw the circle the other way. You start to feel the glutes working. And then bring the knees together. A little bit of tapping. So tapping is a way of talking to the nervous system, relaxing the muscles. Développé, you're going to bring the knee into the chest, knee to ceiling, foot to ceiling and flex, strong abs, strong glutes as you exhale and come down in line with your spine. So you breathe in, knee to front, we've got flexion, we've got rotation, we've got extension, strong abs all the way down. So a lot of the ranges that we were doing in the standing position. You're allowed to move your spine in this one, so you can't do this one in a neutral spine. You have to allow the spine to move to accommodate this big range. Focus on the bottom muscles coming down. Last one, breathing in, knee to ceiling, flexing And really strong leg down. And bring the knees in, a little bit of tapping. Keep an eye on the time. So then we extended the top leg. We came forward, so that is a flexion movement into an extension. So the extension is the hard one. And just make sure the ribs don't pop forward, the back doesn't round, and just keep the stretch in the legs. If you move the upper body will absorb the stretch and the legs won't have to do the work. So feel that strong stretch at the front, feel that strong stretch at the back. One more. Find that extension because that's one of the hardest ranges for the body to take. Bend the knee and now do the circle, which brings in extension and flexion and really uses the big muscles. So this is the développé again. Big circle, focus on your abs and then you'll find the movement becomes more coordinated, a little bit smoother. One more. So definitely can feel my leg muscles. And then we came into a quad stretch. Big space between the heel and the bottom, soft in the elbow, and you're pushing forward from the front of the pelvis to find that nice stretch in your quads. So quads are going to get really locked long and tight if you sit for too long. So the quad stretches you're sitting, but then you're not moving for hours and hours, and so they lock in a long position, which is really going to wreak havoc with your posture. Relax the stretch. Take the bottom foot out, foot to the knee, and gently pulling down. So that's your outer quad and your iliotibial band. Tension fascia lata. Just go to your sort of 60% range. And then gently releasing. So let's get into the quads a little bit more. Let's come onto our fronts. So like I say, if you're sitting for a long time, the two worst areas are going to be your neck and they're going to be your quads and your tension fascia lata, your hip. So let's just lie face down and bring our right foot up. And let's just see if we could take our right hand to the back, hold the foot. See if you can hold the foot. If you can, just lock your elbow, don't bend your elbow, so long arm. Don't let it jump into your shoulder and your neck. And just see if you could start by pushing your hips into the floor. If you can't hold your foot, you would just do it with a lifted foot and you would just be pushing the hips into the floor. So often when you see tight quads, you'll feel that you're lifting at the front of your pelvis. It's actually quite hard to get your pelvis into the floor. So as you pull your foot in, you'll want to hike your pelvis up because you're tight at the front of the pelvis. So just see if you can push the bones of the pelvis at the front into the mat. Now, if you want to advance this, just try breathing into the belly and allow the in-breath to float your head and ribs off the floor. You can use your neck muscles a little bit to lift the head, but the rib cage coming away from the floor comes from the breath. So you push your long locked arm, you push your foot into your hand and you breathe in. You're breathing out and you come down. So focus on the breath, breathing in, breathing out. One more. Breathing in, breathing out, and then let your right foot fall to the right side. Turn to look to the left and bring your left knee up. This is called the pretzel. As your left knee comes up, you'll feel the quad stretching in the right leg quite strongly. And just take a breath. And then ease the left knee down, turn your head down, bring your right foot up. Let go of your right foot. So left foot comes up and just see if you can easily hold the foot. If you can't, the foot is just lifted, right hand under forehead. And again, just try pushing the front of your pelvis into the mat and then relax. Do that 3 or 4 times and just see how tight are you in your hip flexors and your quads, the front of your thighs. So you'll feel tightness at the front of the pelvis. See if you can get the bones of your pelvis to touch the mat. So then add the breath if you want to make it stronger. Long locked arm, push the foot into the hand, breathe in and allow the head to float, allow the belly to push you up, and breathing out. So this is going to be stretching your quads, your hip flexors, your psoas, which is the main hip flexor. So the psoas is at the front of the spine, from the rib cage all the way down to the inside of your leg. So these are the muscles that get short and tight if you sit for too long. Breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. One more, breathing in, breathing out. Let the left foot fall to the left side. Turn your head to the right and bring your right knee up and just stay there for a couple of breaths. You feel the hip stretching on the left, feel the quads. And then slowly sliding the right knee down, turn the head down, bring the left foot up and let go of the foot. Hands on the shoulders and push back into kneeling. And just give yourself a little bit of a stretch in the back after that. Just make sure everything feels good. So let's just finish with a psoas stretch. Come onto our knees. So we're stretching the psoas because that is the strongest hip flexor. That's the one that's going to really get upset when you're sitting for too long. So you're going to have your knees at hip space. You're going to take your right foot forward, put your right hand on your right thigh, and you're going to take your left arm up. So it's sort of a kneeling mermaid. And first of all, just open the ribs from the pelvis on that stretching side. So disassociate the 12th rib from the crest of the pelvis. So there's a whole load of muscles in here. So at the moment, we're working our lateral line and a little bit of our superficial back line. So then, as you've gotten used to that, you're going to come into the mermaid and you're going to rotate your ribs towards the bent knee. And then you're going to take your heart to the ceiling and slightly arching backwards. Take a deep breath in. You feel the psoas on the left side and then lower the ribs, turn the chest to front and come back down. So you're working the psoas on this side. So we do that one more time. Up and over, find a comfortable stretch. Rotate towards the bent knee. Do what's called an arabesque. You arch backwards, heart to ceiling, and then you use your breath. So the diaphragm and the psoas are connected. So the breath is just really going to get into the psoas and then slowly down and come around and come back down. Change the legs. The left leg forward, hip space so you don't feel like you're balancing. Left hand on thigh, and you're just gently coming up and over and just disassociate the rib cage from the pelvis and come back into center, up and over. So if you've been sitting for too long, you could just do elements of this. Just pick and mix and do the bits that you like. Or if you've got an hour, you could do the whole class. So now we're coming up and over. Rotate towards the bent knee. Arabesque is to arch backwards, heart to ceiling. Keep your chin tucked. Take a deep breath in. You feel the right side of the body stretching through the psoas, lowering the chest. Come back into center. Bring the arm down. So do that one more time. Up and over. Side bend. Rotate to the bent knee. Arabesque and arch backwards. Take a deep breath in. And then lowering the chest, come back into center, drop the arm and bring the knee back in. So now knees and hips. Let's just have our knees slightly apart. Keep an eye on the time, we're almost there. You're going to just sit towards your right heel. Come back to center. Sit towards your left heel. So that's a nice hip stretch. TFL, iliotibial band. You could take your arms out to help with balance. Arms up. Nice and slow, so your body doesn't have to struggle. Depending on how your knees are, you could sort of sit towards the outside of the foot. I'm quite tight, so I can't quite reach the floor, but I'm sort of halfway between the heel and the floor. One more. And then come back into center. Go down on a diagonal towards your heels. Do a pelvic tuck. Bring your shoulders back, bring your hands back, strong abs to come back up. So leaning forward on a diagonal, sit towards your heels, tuck your tailbone under, bring your shoulders back, bring your hands back, lifting 2 more, leaning forward with the hands, go down on a diagonal, pelvic tuck, shoulders back, arms back, lifting. So this is pelvis and quads. Last time, going down, so we're firing up those quads so that they're not locked long, but they're actually moving again. And then just take the arms down, hands into the small of the back, just arch backwards, look up, take a breath, breathing out, and you've finished.